How's it going, everyone? Javita here with a Forge tutorial kind of crash course. The Forge, if you're unaware of, is a pretty awesome machine. It has to do with like augmenting and adding special properties to your tools and equipment. So you can make a tool that automatically attracts loot to you and loots corpses for you. So you just walk through a whole bunch of corpses and it just vacuum cleaners up all the loot. You can also make AoE tools, so you can make like a hammer that mines out 9 blocks at a time, or a 3x3 square, and yeah, make a sling bow that does a lot of damage. So pretty awesome tool. Okay, and this is where all the main action actually takes place. So to start forging, basically all you have to do is take your tool, drop it down here, and then click the begin forging. In its simplest form, all you need is some boon compound and a setting resin. The setting resin is what you use to finish the forging. The boon compound will power this bar up, which will eventually power up the various buffs here. If you're using something like a defective or an unstable boon compound, they give more boon points for powering up the boons, but then they may also give you quirk points and defects. Quirks are kind of, they're generally negative, but sometimes they have some interesting effects. Like some might make you sink faster, other might make all blocks act like trampolines, and then others might just make you bleed constantly while you have the tool equipped. So they're not necessarily negative, but most of the time they are. Then defects are just flat out debuffs. They'll do things like decrease the tool's damage or decrease their durability, just things that are flat out not good. And so yeah, that is kind of the basics of that. So in order to get started forging, you just drag one of these things down here into the center, and then you can begin or activate the forge, and it will go through the forging process. So that is forging in a nutshell. Of course, there's a lot more intricacies than that. For one thing, we have this effectiveness right here. And yeah, effectiveness determines what percentage of these boon points that you get. So if you only have 50% effectiveness, you will only get 50% of the beneficial effects of these boon compounds. So this one does 500. So if I have an effectiveness of 50%, then I'd only get 250 boon points. Effectiveness is determined by a number of things. It's determined by the flexibility of the item. So right here you can see this hammer has a flexibility of 60. It's also affected by the intelligence of my character. So if I put more points into intelligence, it makes the effectiveness go up. And then finally, effectiveness is also determined by how much power the machine has. So an iron hammer would be pretty easy even without power. However, if I wanted to forge something like a gem hammer, then I might need max intelligence along with a lot of power to make that actually happen. So taking a look at skills right quick, the things you can do to make forging easier is to max out your vitality, power, and intelligence. And then in order to actually max those attributes out, you also need to pick up the attribute bonus over here. Scroll down here, you can also take this forging epic. This gives you an extra 20 flexibility on top of what the tool already has, as well as allowing you 2 extra slots in the ingredients deck, which is this right here. So without that skill point, I would be missing these 2 slots over here. It's good to note that you cannot have smart stacks in the ingredient deck, so the most of any particular item you can take is 100. Naturally, I could have 2 stacks, but then it takes up 2 ingredient slots. And each one of these ingredients kind of acts like a crafting skill, so you have to be rather strategic in the items that you bring with you. So down here we have Vigor and Stability. So Vigor is determined by power and stability is determined by vitality. So you can think of stability as the health of the item. If stability reaches 0, then the item breaks and the forging process fails. Stability is augmented by your character's vitality. Vigor is determined by your character's power and is essentially crafting points. Various items up here, particularly the more powerful ones, will cost a certain amount of vigor. If your vigor reaches 0, nothing bad really happens. You simply can no longer use anything else that requires vigor. So all the forging items are crafted in the extractor, and you will need the forging items recipe skill in order to be able to craft these. I believe there's just only 2 ranks of them to be able to craft all of it, so not too bad. Naturally, you could also buy all of this stuff from somebody else if you really didn't want to craft it yourself. But coming down here, you can see that you would first have to craft all of these bases to be able to craft the actual items themselves. So like if I wanted to craft this pure boon compound, I would need a compound base. So right up here at top, you can see that there's several different categories of forging items. So in short, compounds are used to power up boons, defects, and quirks. Haste apply temporary buffs to the forging process, such as using 50% less stability or gaining a little bit of vigor over several turns. Gums are permanent buffs used to target certain categories of boons. Catalysts will transmute various things into other things, and in particular there's one catalyst that will take all buffs and debuffs to the forging process, consume them, and convert it into vigor. So it's a fairly interesting effect. Solvents have to do with removing unwanted boons, quirks, and defects. And finally, resins will either finalize or destroy the forging process. If you opt to destroy the forging process, then it will of course destroy the item, but you will have a chance to recover at least some of your forging ingredients used. And coming down to the gums, these will help you target the different categories of buffs. And to just go over these very briefly, ease gums have to do with adding things like mastery to tools and weapons, as well as critical strike chance. Then there's the lightness gum that'll increases action speed as well as the speed of projectiles. The special category has to do with things like AoE effects for tools and weapons, as well as loot attraction and auto creature harvesting. The effect category generally augments the stats that are already on the piece of equipment, such as increased damage, critical strike damage, or reel in and reel out speed for grapples. It's good to note that the effect category does not cover things like critical strike chance, but will cover the critical strike damage. The longevity category has to do with making things last longer, so most obvious would be durability, but this also covers things like increased range for grapples and the like. And finally, the glow gum has to do with, well, glowing effects, such as making a piece of equipment act as a light source. So that covers the major categories, but you might notice that there is a reduction and expansion gum down here. So the trait reduction gum, this will help focus further boon points going towards the traits that are already on the piece of equipment, whereas the expansion gum will encourage the new points to go towards new effects. So if you got on your first roll, say, some extra damage and you wanted to boost that boon as much as possible, you could put on several reduction gums, and then the points would be more likely to go towards that boon that is already on there. Or if you wanted the boon points to go to new traits, then you could use a trait expansion gum. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the forging process. This is just one of those things that you just kind of have to jump in there and start tinkering with it to fully understand what the heck is going on. So right off the bat, we have this iron hammer. So what I would like to do with this hammer is to get at least the loot attraction boon on it. This will allow me, when I go hunting, to just equip the hammer and then run through the battlefield, and any corpses that are on the ground will automatically be looted and picked up. So that is a massive quality of life improvement for hunters. Unfortunately, they can only go on to tools, so hammer, shovels, axes, and spanners. Might even be able to do chisels, but you might as well do something like a hammer if it has to be a tool. So that would fall under the special category, so I'm going to put on several gums because they do stack. I'm not 100% sure, but I think each one of these will make it a maybe 10% more likely, so I think I'm going to do 4, and that seems to work pretty well. So I got my 4 stacks of the special trait chance right there, and what I could start doing is just putting some of this boon compound on here. However, what I found that works even better is to use this boon boost pace, and for 4 turns it'll give me 50% extra boon points. So that's going to make this boon compound work even harder for me. And now I can start using the pure boon compound. So give me 750 boon points, and what it's going to do is it's going to fill up this bar. This bar can only hold up to 1,000 boon points. And there we go, right off the bat we got the magnetic collector boon. So actually I think I'm going to switch gears here and put some of this trait reduction gum on here. If I continue going how I'm going, then it would probably put several other boons, which actually, since we're targeting the special category, you might get some AoE, but we really don't plan on using this hammer for anything but this magnetic collector. So the more we can power this up, the better. And we will kind of waste our boon boost a little bit here, but not a whole lot we can really do about that. Okay, so I went ahead and put 6 of these on here. I think that's probably way overkill, but it's a bit of an experiment, what can I say? So let's go back to putting our boon paste on here to get the most out of our pure boon compound up there. And go back to adding points. There we go, filled up the bar. As you can see, that slider's going up and down, and wherever it lands, it basically pushes the points into the item. So you can have a completely full bar right here, but if it lands really low, then it doesn't push much of the boon points into here. Also, if you have a full bar, it's best to use something that is cheaper, either in just flat out cost to make, or something that uses less vigor. So like this right here, it doesn't do very much as far as boon points, but it only costs stability, which helps us to save our vigor. Very nice. Okay, so as you saw, it landed outside of the yellow portion, and if it does that, that means it's a miss and nothing happens. So you still want it to land inside the yellow bar just as high as possible. Because this is so close to the top, if we use this, we're going to use 100 vigor and most of the points are going to be wasted. So let's actually switch out and use this basic combat one right here, and that is going to save our vigor and still top off the bar at least a little bit. We still have at least 1 buff of the boon boost, so that is quite nice. There we go, we topped off our meter there. Now it really doesn't matter where it lands, and did that actually stick? Yes. Okay, so we are getting an AoE effect on here. It's a little bit disappointing. I figured with 6 stacks that pretty much all of it would go towards this. So let's go ahead and reapply our boon paste. Okay, so I'm going to use the basic compound right here because we're way over, we're about 70%, so don't want to waste both our vigor or our ingredients. Very nice. Let's go ahead and replace our boon paste. Getting pretty low on vigor, but we still have some stability left over to spend, so we can try to eke out a little bit more. Honestly though, I think this is the maximum rank of this magnet collector boon, but yeah, just kind of experiment and see if we can get it to go any higher. We could also try to boost up this all-arounder boon, but it's already hitting all 9 blocks, so not really sure why I'm continuing other than just to experiment basically. Looks like it'd be better to use the basic compound version. Just need to make sure we don't accidentally use up all our stability. Yeah, it is refusing to go into that magnetic collector, so sounds like that is the maximum rank of that. Let's go ahead and max out our boon points here and use our last 100 vigor. It looks like we'll have just enough stability to get one more round of forging. Because if we look at this, the maximum stability that this can use is 110, and we have 112 stability, so no matter what, it's not going to break, and there's no vigor cost, so we can squeak one more round of forging in, and hopefully, yeah, that should, I guess it could still technically miss, but oh wow, that was practically a miss. So yeah, now we have no choice but to use the setting resin, and yeah, it looks like both of these are maxed out. So that's why we got this new trait over here, is because this one just, you know, we filled up the bar, but there is no rank 4, so it was pushed into the AoE skill, and then it looks like we maxed that out. It would be kind of nice if there was maybe a rank 5 that decreased that debuff to damage, but hey, we're still hitting 9 blocks at a time, so what more could we really ask for? Go ahead and set this. And there we go, your gear is setting, which takes some time. Progress is shown in the queue. So now we can come over to the queue, take a look at it. It looks like it's going to take an hour for this to set. If we had stopped before we had gotten that AoE buff, then this probably would have taken a lot less time. And normally you can right click on these to see what there we go. So yeah, because of that AoE effect, we're going to do 420 damage less. However, the skill damage can easily overcome that, plus that's per block. So overall, we're going to be doing a lot more damage because, you know, that 532 times 9, because it's going to hit 9 blocks at a time. So overall, we're doing more damage. It's just it's spread out over a greater number of blocks. And there we go, we got that 6-meter attraction range, so this will be quite handy. The nice thing about the attraction range, if you're going to use it for looting creatures only, it doesn't cost any durability to the item, so you could just forge this and basically use it as a stat stick and never really have to worry about it wearing out. Naturally, if we actually use it to go mining with, which we certainly could, it would be kind of handy to have the attraction range to make sure we pick up all the drops, but of course it would incur durability, wherein it would eventually break. Anyway, that covers the Forge crash course pretty well, I think. Obviously, this is a pretty complex little mini game here, and there's probably like 1,000 different strategies that you could probably come up with. But yeah, this is just kind of what I've been doing myself. You can forge some pretty awesome equipment using these strategies. Anyway, this was Javita. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and if there's anything you didn't like, please let me know down below. Also, if you like my channel and want to get cool perks, check out my Patreon page. Until next time, peace.